Hey folks, I'm Melhorn. In this video, we're going to go over 4 reasons on why and when you should add a leader to your fishing line. Well, the first question is, folks, what is a leader line? In simple terms, it's a piece of line that is added to your fishing line. Now, you can take the fishing line that is on your reel and you can tie a hook or a lure directly to that. But what a leader does is it gives you a different piece of material from your main line. And there's several reasons why you want to add this different piece of fishing line to your main line. Now, this leader varies in length. It can be anywhere from 12 inches all the way up to 3 or 4 or 5 feet, depending on what you are fishing for. Generally speaking though, for most people that are going to be watching this video to learn about a leader, it's going to be anywhere from 12 to 24 inches. Now, you can tie this leader material directly to your fishing line using a uni-knot. I've got a video that will show you how to tie that knot, or you can use a swivel in between. What the swivel does is it cuts down on the twists in the line as it comes through the water, especially if you're pulling lures, baits, trolling, that type thing. Or if the fish is hooked up and twisting and turning, having a swivel in between your main line and your leader will help with some of that twist. Well, with the basic definition of what a leader is out of the way, let's get to reason number 1 that you're going to use it, and that's abrasion resistance. Now, what abrasion resistance means is your leader is going to be a tougher line, a tougher material than your main fishing line. There's a lot of things that can eat through or cut away at a fishing line, causing it to break. One of those things are fish's teeth or the bristles that are in a fish's mouth. Now, not all fish have teeth, but most of them have some type of bristle in there. It's almost like a sandpaper. And depending on how thin your main line is, with enough wear and tear and back and forth of that line across these little bristles, it can tear it in half. Another thing is the fins on a fish. A lot of times fins have sharp edges. Some of the striped bass, perch, catfish especially, have very sharp edges on their fins. And as the fish is fighting and gets wrapped up, if you don't have a piece of little tougher material there, those fins can cut through your fishing line. Another thing is what your line comes in contact with on the bottom, especially if you're using a Carolina rig and you're bottom fishing. That final length of line is what comes in contact with the bottom. There could be rocks, there could be coral, there could be tree limbs, lots of stuff down there that can cut your line. So having a little bit thicker piece of material on the end, that leader, will help keep that fish on the line. Now, when it comes to abrasion resistance, it's hard to beat monofilament and fluorocarbon lines. These are the fishing lines that you traditionally see that almost look like they're made out of a plastic material. Most people, when putting a leader onto their fishing line, are using something clear. We'll get to that reason a little bit later on. Monofilament, fluorocarbon, both excellent materials for making a leader line. Now, some of you may have heard of braided line or braid, and you may be asking, well, why don't you use braid? The problem with braid is, while it has many great advantages, and I use it regularly, it is not resistant to abrasion. You get a few fibers cut on it, and the whole line will come apart. So it's not a very abrasion resistant line, and consequently, a lot of people may be using braid as their main line, and then adding monofilament or fluorocarbon as their leader. Now, if you're doing any saltwater fishing, or if you're fishing in freshwater for some of the toothy critters that are out there, you may need to add a piece of wire instead of monofilament. There's various different sizes of wire. This stuff is much harder for these toothy fish to bite through. But generally speaking, it's not something you're going to need in most fishing situations that you're getting into. And honestly, when you're first starting out, that's probably not something that you're going to encounter. Now, reason number 2 is visibility. Like I said earlier, these monofilament and fluorocarbon lines are generally clear. Most people are using a clear line. While these lines come in different colors, high-vis yellow and blue and pink, most people are using clear monofilament and fluorocarbon for their leader material. And one of the reasons is just visibility. Some fish, anglers believe, are line shy. What that means is that if they see a bait or lure that they're going for and they see that fishing line attached to it, they're not going to hit it or take it. And using lines like fluorocarbon, which transmit very little light and reflect very little light, it can help you get hooked up more often. Now, a lot of this varies depending on what the water clarity is where you're fishing, but it really becomes important when you start getting into some crystal clear, gin clear water in some of the lakes and some of the shallow saltwater areas. Now, reason number 3, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, is that it allows you to put a lighter line on your reel. That gives you more line capacity. And generally speaking, it's a lot easier to cast, especially long distance and very accurately with a lighter line. In this situation, the leader material is heavier. It's basically the strong end of your fishing connection. You still get the easy casting and line capacity on the back end, but you got the strength there in the final distance to where your hook or your lure is. Now, reason number 4 is one that I don't totally agree with or use, but it gets done a lot in the catfish community. And what people are doing is using a 30, 40, 50 pound leader, and then they're putting a super huge main line on the reel, 70, 80, 90 pound line. The thinking is if you get snagged up, you can break it off and save your sinker. Basically what happens is your leader breaks instead of your main line, and you're able to save your sinker and anything basically upstream of that leader. Now, in theory, that works pretty good, and generally speaking, if you're hard up for saving the money that it costs to buy a sinker, then it may be a good idea for you. But sadly, a lot of times what gets snagged up in these situations is the sinker itself, and then you're left with trying to break 80 pound line. The problem with trying to break these lines is, one, you can cut it right at the reel, and that's easy and fine, but you lose a lot of line when you do that. The other problem is when you're pulling and trying to break it, you've got to wrap this line around your arm, a broom handle, the reel, something. It's putting a lot of stress on something to break that heavy of a line. Well, there you go, folks. There's 4 reasons and 4 applications for using a leader when you're out fishing. Like I said, you can tie a hook or a lure straight to your fishing line, and in a lot of a situation, that's going to work just fine. When I am trolling for crappie with jigs, I do that all the time. When I have a castable bait, topwater bait, when I'm striper fishing, I've got it tied onto the main line. But when I'm fishing for catfish, when I'm downlining for stripers, and obviously when I'm saltwater fishing for sharks and some of those other toothy creatures out there, I'm gonna have some kind of leader material in there that's a little bit heavier and gives me that abrasion resistance that my main line doesn't give me. So hopefully this gives you some input. You can put it to use the next time you go out fishing. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're gonna like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know, just watch them both. They're both good.